Mira, ¿dónde tiene esto el compartir pantalla? Ah, ya la vi, perdona.
Iniciamos, don Oscar.
Ok, perfecto. Usted me dice listo.
Listo.
Hello, good morning and good afternoon, everyone. It's a pleasure to stay here and with another webinar of the World Council of Civil Engineers. In this case, we have a distinguished professional of our country. This is Mr. Rafael Oramuno. He is a civil engineer, master's degree in hydrology and river hydraulics, professor at the School of Civil Engineering at the University of Costa Rica, and consultant in hydrology and hydraulic design of structures. Mr. Oramuno is a closer engineer of the Colegios Civiles in Costa Rica, and we appreciate your collaboration here today. So, engineer, please, the floor is yours, and welcome.
Thank you for your kind words, Oscar. And for me, it's a pleasure and a privilege to share with you some ideas about building with nature or nature-based solution in the engineering design. Well, design and operation also. Let me share a short presentation so that to keep track of the ideas. And okay, the title, like Living Infrastructure and Building the Future with Nature, is kind of like the ideas or the goals that society are asking us to pursue when we design infrastructure. Let me just share with you some of the concepts about nature-based solutions, because that is something that has been around like ideas for, I think, the last three decades, when the concept of sustainable development became an ethical and regulatory framework for the use of natural resources. And according to the Brundtland report from 1987, sustainable development is the development that meets the needs of the present without compromising the ability of future generations to meet their own needs. And within this framework or this definition, we as engineers are asked by society to use in a more responsible way the natural resources that we have on hand. We have to remember that the engineers and agricultural engineers, we are probably the professionals that most intensively use the natural resources and are the professionals that that constantly change the landscape that we live on. In the 2015, in the Paris Summit, three pillars of the sustainable development were developed, and it was said that the pillars of the sustainable development are social pillar, the economic, and the environment pillar. This concept of sustainable development with these three pillars has permeated the work of design and construction of infrastructure carried out by engineers, and I should say also the architects. Now, the common denominator of the above-mentioned concepts is the protection and preservation of the natural resources while taking advantage of the benefits that nature may provide to mankind. So it is quite important that we keep in mind that what we are looking here is to use the natural resources, but within a framework of protection and preservation. So this also requires that we have better information and more information about the natural resources and how they change seasonally and also within the years. In 2022, the United Nations Environmental Assembly agreed upon the following definition of nature-based solution. And they said that the nature-based solutions refers to the actions aimed at protecting, conserving, restoring, and sustainably managing natural or modified terrestrial, freshwater, coastal, and marine ecosystems, which address social, economic, and environmental challenges effectively and adaptively, while simultaneously providing human well-being, ecosystem services, resilience, and biodiversity benefits. This definition, as you may see, it's more oriented towards hydraulic resources, because as you can see, is freshwater, coastal, marine ecosystems, and even though we have the terrestrial part of it, it's more focus on the hydraulic resources. But the important thing here is that we have to effectively and adaptively use these resources while providing human well-being or taking advantage of the benefits that these resources give to mankind. Now, the importance of the above definition is that it establishes a balance between protection and conservation of the natural resources while using them to meet the needs of society. Application of the concept of nature-based solution in the engineering design process, the challenge of it is to use nature as a model for the design and operation of infrastructure. And we go back to the concept of using and preserving. And if I have to, as a design engineer, to use nature as a model, I have to understand very well how nature works, how are the physical processes or the natural physical processes of the systems that I want to mimic. And of course, I need information that quantifies how much or how little I do have of that resource. So the challenge is not only to use nature as a model, but also to know how model works and in what detail it works. A very good example of the use of nature-based solution in the design process has been in the design and improvement of stormwater system. I'm going to use this system and another one just to show how we can use nature-based solution in the design process, and how we can implement such solutions within, not only within actual system, but also within new systems. The goal of the design and improvement of stormwater system now is to incorporate natural processes of the hydrologic cycle that are lost or diminished with the development of urban areas. Let me. Sorry for that. I like to show this figure here because it shows how with the design of urban areas we have lost some processes of the hydrologic cycle that right now are the ones that, or let me say so, that because we lose them, then we have some flooding problems, and not only flooding problems, but also heat problems in the cities. If we have a natural environment, as you can see here on the figure on the left, when it rains, we have interception of the precipitation by the vegetation. So a part of the volume of the precipitation will be retained at the vegetation. It will be stored here in the trees and bushes. The part that reach the ground may infiltrate and recharge the aquifers, and the part of the precipitation that becomes runoff will run into the rivers. And since the rivers do not have any lateral constraint, then the flooding or the overtopping of the river banks will rather extend instead of rising in the river channel. And the water that is stored here in the vegetation and also in the soil, as the part that infiltrates in the soil, is then available also for evaporation once the storm is over. So that we have also the process of evaporation and transpiration by the plants. That is an important factor in the hydrologic cycle. When we lose these processes, when we develop the urban areas, then the volumes, I should say, that are stored in the vegetation or infiltrates, we lose them, and those volumes become surface runoff. So we are increasing the surface runoff, and therefore also we increase the discharges that go into the river. Now, since we also constrain our rivers or our urban rivers laterally, then we have no longer the expansion processes once the river banks are overtopped, and then the water levels in the river channels are higher than with the natural process. So as you may see, losing these elements of the hydrologic cycle give us higher discharges during the wet season and smaller discharges during the dry seasons, since we lose the recharge to the aquifers, and during the wet season we lose the interception and the infiltration processes. This slide is just mentioned what I just said, and but what we are trying to do now with the new focus on the storm systems, or the design of storm systems, is to mimic the natural environment processes. That means that we are trying to recuperate these processes that we lose when we develop urban areas. And the goal is to maintain the components of the hydrological cycle as close as possible to the natural state. Here is a way of trying to quantify the amount of humidity that we lose or we change from interception and infiltration into surface runoff. This is after Zevenbergen et al. And derived from the document of Valley Conservation. These numbers are not like fixed numbers or the real numbers for every part of the planet, because interception depends on the type of vegetation that you may have, and also the infiltration depends upon the soil characteristics that you may have on a drainage area. But they can guide us or give at least a very good idea on how we change the hydrologic cycle, and that change in the hydrologic cycle also changes not only the landscape, but also the conditions that we live on. You may see here on this figure that from the volume of precipitation, around 40% returns to the atmosphere as evapotranspiration from the water that is stored in the vegetation and in the soil. Around 25% of it infiltrates, and from this volume, around 25 transform or recharges the aquifers, becomes deep infiltration, and just about 10% becomes surface runoff. As I mentioned, this is something that depends upon the characteristics of the vegetation and of the soil upon which the storm occurs. This 10% in some cases might raise up to 20%, 25%, depending, as I mentioned, on the different characteristics of the land use on the drainage area. If we change all this just by an impermeable area around the development of a city, we may see that we lose part of the evapotranspiration because we lost the interception and infiltration processes. We also lose the infiltration and the on the soil, and also the deep infiltration to the aquifers, and around 55% of the total volume of precipitation becomes surface runoff. So you may see, according to Sevenbergen, that we have incremented the surface runoff in the city by 5 times the natural runoff that we had when we didn't have this development. There is a study here that was down in a creek that is named the Dry Creek here on the central plateau of Costa Rica, and it has been estimated that since the 1940s up to the 2020, the runoff volume has increased by about a factor of 3 on the area, and the discharges have increased. The maximum discharges of the hydrograph have increased in a little bit over 3 times, 3.2, 325. I don't remember it exactly. So it is not that far away from what Sevenbergen is mentioned in his study. If we switch from here to a more natural environment, trying to recuperate those processes of evapotranspiration, infiltration, interception, then we might recover part of the evaporation. We also may recover the infiltration and in the soil, and we diminish also the runoff volume, increasing it a little bit, let's say like 50% over the natural environment. So we may see that we have really an important benefit when we use natural-based solutions. Now, to achieve the goal of natural-based solutions, the goal of protecting and preserving our natural resources while taking advantage of the benefits that nature may provide, it is necessary to incorporate these natural processes into the conceptualization of the infrastructure that is going to be designed, so that it not only becomes a hydraulic problem of dimensioning pipes and manholes, but also how do we incorporate these processes of interception, evaporation, infiltration within the design process. So, in the particular case of the stormwater system, the natural processes that we want to incorporate in the system are interception, infiltration, percolation, and evapotranspiration. And now, what we need to do is that our system or our project mimic the natural processes that we mentioned before, and we can do that by using several elements that we can incorporate to our stormwater system. I am going to mention some of them. For example, tree planting, that is a process of transplanting tree seedlings, generally for forestry, land recreation, or landscaping purposes. And with tree planting, what we are doing is increasing the interception of the precipitation by the vegetation. We can also have tree trenches that we can put on the sidewalks, because a tree trench is a system of trees that are connected by an underground infiltration structure. So with a tree trench, we increment both interception and infiltration, and it also helps to recuperate the evapotranspiration process evaporating the water that is stored in the soil and the vegetation. We may have also infiltration systems, and these are structures that are specifically designed to promote infiltration in soil layers. This can be like infiltration basin, infiltration trenches like the one we have seen before, rain gardens, permeable pavements that we can install on the sidewalks. And these systems, as the name implies, they promote infiltration and percolation while also increasing evapotranspiration. Rain gardens is a very nice idea because they might be implemented also in individual houses as downspout disconnection, as in green spaces, available in built-up areas that are usually placed for aesthetic purposes. So rain gardens provide runoff storage and promote infiltration, percolation, and evapotranspiration. Temporary retaining water also reduces the discharges that the storm system must convey. Permeable pavements is an idea that has been around for, I think, over 80 years, and it was derived after World War II on concrete structures originally, that the concrete of those structures, for the concrete of those structures, the fine materials, the sand, were eliminated because it was not available. And so they discovered that gave a permeable concrete that could be used on the streets or sidewalks. These pavements are used or may be used in areas like parking lots or streets where you may not have a heavy traffic. With the permeable pavements, we mimic the infiltration and percolation processes. We also may have green streets, combining vegetation, soil, and permeable pavements to slow and store runoff from impermeable areas. Green streets improve the infiltration and percolation rates, stores water in the soil, and increases evapotranspiration. An idea that has become quite popular in the last 15 years, I think, are green roofs. A green roof is a cover with lightweight vegetation, but with a very important characteristic. It has to have dense foliage, because the dense foliage will increase the interception of the precipitation, and this vegetation is planted over a waterproofing membrane. So in this way, with the green roofs, and also it can be implemented on vertical walls, these green roofs and green walls may provide increment in interception by the vegetation, water storage in the soil, and thus also increasing the evaporation rates. And then we have also the detention ponds that are structures designed to temporarily store the excess storm runoff for subsequent release at a rate that does not exceed the capacity of the downstream existing drainage facilities. So as you may see, we have different elements that we can incorporate in our stormwater systems that will mimic some of the natural process of the hydrologic cycle, will help us balance or have a more balanced hydrologic cycle in the city, and will give us a nicer environment and landscape within the city. So the common denominator of the previous mentioned system is that they incorporate nature-based solution to the stormwater system, so to manage and convey urban runoff, to retain and store water, mimicking the interception, the ponding, the infiltration, the percolation, and the evapotranspiration processes of the hydrologic cycle. So, as can be seen, to incorporate these nature-based solutions require a change in the vision, a change in the principles of the design of a stormwater system. 3 or 4 decades ago, the design principle of the stormwater system was to dispose the water as quickly as possible to the river. But now, what we are looking for is a system that stores the water, that incorporates the different elements that will retain the humidity in order to have a more natural environment for the management of the precipitation events. Another very nice example where nature-based solutions have been used very effectively is in the protection and restoration of riverbanks. The protection and restoration of riverbanks require that the velocity near the banks becomes 0 or very close to 0 to eliminate the erosion of the bank and enable the sediment to deposit along the riverbank. This can be achieved using dikes and letting the river do the work. Yeah, dikes are structures that extend out from the riverbank into the flow, and these structures are aligned perpendicular to the flow or in a slightly downstream direction, as we can see here. So this is the riverbank that is being eroded, and then we place this kind of structures here. These are the dikes, so that when the water comes through this ridge, then when it hits the dike, the velocity within the structures is reduced to 0 or near 0, so that in here, the sediment that is transported by the river will be deposited here, so that you will have here sediment accumulation along these structures, and thus you recuperate the riverbank and protect it from erosion. So we just design and build the structures, and then we let the river do the work. Because once the sediment level between dikes exceed the water level, then the vegetation starts colonizing the area and restoring the riverbanks. In this case, as I mentioned before, the work to restore the riverbank is done by the river in a very natural way by accumulating the sediments between dikes. This is a solution that takes advantage of the natural process of sedimentation, where we do work with nature instead of fighting nature. So, just to resume what we have said, nature-based solutions allow engineers to design and build more sustainable and resilient in infrastructure, because the basic principle when implementing nature-based solution is to work with nature rather than battle nature. So the idea is let nature do the work. And besides protecting and preserving the natural resources and taking advantages of the benefits that they provide, nature-based solution approach also help us to restore natural habitats, help us with the absorption of CO2. We have healthier ecosystems, ecological connectivity, climatic regulation, an improvement in habitability, aesthetic improvement of the landscape, more recreation and leisure, physical and psychological well-being. There have been several studies in this particular field of the physical and psychological well-being, saying that when we do have a more natural environment around us, we are more productive, we feel better. It's like a better place to be. And also the improvement on public health. So we have to remind that we did not inherit this planet from our parents, but we borrow it from our children. So it is our responsibility to give them a better world than the one we found. Thank you very much for your attention, and we leave us some space, some time for your comments and observation. Thank you very much.
Well, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Oremuno.
My pleasure, Mr. Sanchez.
Okay, thank you for your presentation. We will now open a space for questions, which you may submit through the chat, and we will gladly relay them to Engineer Oremuno. Please, if you have a question. Okay, we have this message from Engineer Andreas Brander. He said, thank you for interesting and inspiring presentation. We engineers should learn not to design against nature, but with nature. Yes, of course. Thank you, Mr. Brander. Okay, we have a comment from Lilian Kilatia from Kenya. She said, quite informative session. Thanks. Thank you, Engineer Rafael. Okay, thank you, Lily. Okay, if we don't have more questions, we would like to thank Engineer Oremuno once again for the willingness to collaborate with WCCE. And of course, thank all of you for your presence. And we look forward to seeing you at our next webinar in August, which we will announce through our social media channels. And we invite you to follow us there. We also kindly ask you to complete the survey available in the chat. I think it is already in the chat. So thanks. Thank you. Yes, Mr. Oremuno.
Sorry to interrupt you. There is a question by, I think, Fehi Thabet.
Fethi Tabet, yes, is from Tunisia.
He's asking about the cost of implementing these ideas. About the cost, it is rather tricky, the cost. Here in Costa Rica, we have just finished a guide for the hydrological design of stormwater systems. And this is an issue that we are addressing because we have to balance between the gray infrastructure that will be smaller because you are retaining humidity and you have less water flowing into the stormwater system. But then you have also to build like the trenches, the ponds, or whatever you are using for the natural base solution. And so it's a trade-off between the size of the nature-based solution and the diminishing aspects of the supporting gray solutions. We have seen that in the worst case scenario, at least here for Costa Rica, it might increment in around 10 or 12% the cost of the stormwater system.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Oramuno. Thank you, Feti, for your question and your presence here.
I want also, Oscar, I
Yes.
want to thank the comments of Andres and Lilian. Thank you very much.
Yes, thank you. Well, no more questions. Okay, once again, thank you, Mr. Rafael Oramuno, for your collaboration with WCCE, and all of you, your presence here. And I hope see you soon in our next webinar presentation in August. And thank you for all the participants, and thank you for all the staff. And have a good day, good week, and God bless you. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Thank you all.
Thank you.